All right. Hello, everybody. So today we're going to talk about Domus Analytics. We talked about this a little bit previously. It is a free data analysis service provided by Rain. And I happen to like it quite a bit. It's great to give some nice, easily digestible stats and graphs to your clients. It helps you learn. There goes the screen again. Helps you learn about the market just from a different perspective. So one of the cool things about the MLS and the data we have in there is it is so dense. There are so many data points that we can search for and control for in the MLS. So just think about the data input sheet, right? You have all those little check boxes. Those are actually searchable things within Rain. Then you have financial information. You can search prices. You can search by price change, things like that. Then you can search by agents, which agents are selling things. And it's all just raw data. And you can export all of that into a spreadsheet if you want. But then you have to interpret the data, right? So we can take core data and interpret ourselves, or we can use something like Domus Analytics to distill the information. So to get there, so from the Rain MLS home screen, so this is where you typically log in to go to Matrix and other things. So you can go to products and go down to Domus Analytics here. It's also on the right hand of your screen with the little bar graph thing here. So we just pop into Domus. And here it is, little basic screen, interactive statistics, easy peasy basic stuff. It automatically starts off down on the screen with a market review dashboard. And this gives you basically a snapshot of what we call a rolling 12 months. So looking back 13 months, so March 2025 to or March 2024 to March 2025, it automatically defaults to certain things here. So we're looking at all of Hampton Roads. So we have 148 city, county, municipalities, things like that that are covered in our MLS, right? So that includes northeastern North Carolina, that includes Gloucester, that includes Southampton County, outlying parts of Richmond. And so not all of that may be relevant information. So from these drop-down boxes here, you can say, okay, what do I want to search? So in addition to the geographic areas, we have residential detached, residential attached, multifamily, and land. So let's unselect all and let's just do basic housing, right? Condos attached, townhomes, and then detached homes. We have 5 regions. So we have South Side Peninsula, Greater Williamsburg, North Carolina, other is everything else outside of that. For all of us on the call, we're all South Side people, so let's just pick South Side. And you can see as I'm checking these boxes, the data is updating. So look here, watch the screen below as I click Peninsula. Everything automatically updates as I click. So this is something that maybe when you get comfortable with it, you can put it on your iPad and show your clients like in the moment. It's like, oh, look, let's pivot and do the data. So then here, just the south side, we have it limited now to our Southampton Road cities, Chesapeake, Isle of Wight County, Norfolk, Portsmouth, Suffolk, and Virginia Beach. Let's just make this really simple and focus on Virginia Beach since it's just our oceanfront office here on the call. And I'm partial to Virginia Beach, so there's that. So everything has updated, and this gives us a rolling snapshot of the last 13 months, or rolling 12 months, we'll call it, from March of last year to March of this year. So the median sales price is $395, which here it is compared to February 2025, so month over month, we're down 1.1%, but compared to March 2024, so March of last year, it's up 6.7%. So there was a little bit of a bump in February, and you can move your pointer over these various points on the line here and see where things are. So look here in January, our median sales price was way down, 370. But what likely happened in January was sales, right? They were the trailing effect of the holiday season. So we would normally have people just trying to discount their properties and get them sold over the holidays. So that's not a big deal. And we also don't have a whole lot of activity over the holidays. But it jumped up to 399, 450 in February, and then it's down to 395. So that's, we're still doing okay. And last year to this year, we're up 6.5 or 6.7%. Number of sold properties. These graphics are fun, right? Makes it easy to read. The sold properties from last year, they're down 3.5%, right? Well, we can also explain that as well, but we're also up 18.1% month over month, right? So January, again, not very many sales, 329, and then we jump up to 444 in March. Again, that's a trailing effect of the holiday season. Now, why would we be down year over year in the number of sold units? What are some possible reasons?
Interest rates.
Interest rates have stayed high. What are some other reasons? Inventory. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to pull that out a little bit in a minute, talk more about that. So the perception of reduced inventory, but this is a whole year that we're looking at too. So
An election year.
the election an election year always causes a little bit of a lag in the market. But what happened after the election? Let's specifically look at January 20th onwards. Economic uncertainty, right? So there was a whole lot of confusion and frustration going through the election season. Post-election, it continued, and then we have economic uncertainty. And if anyone missed my interview on Wavy the other night talking about economic uncertainty, it's out there. And there are people that are pulling back on their purchases because they're uncertain of if they'll have a government job or if their contract for their private sector employer will be renewed with the government. So this is not surprising, but it's only 3.5%. So it's, a year over year fluctuation like that is not necessarily concerning to me. Median days on market. Let's pause here for a second. Let's get some vocabulary out of the way. What do we mean when we talk about median?
Yeah. Well, you take you
average
from the highest and then you average.
Right. So the average is going to be all of the data added together and then divided by the number of data, right? The median is where you take the highest and the lowest and drop those outliers off, then you average the rest. And that's perceived to be a more accurate, quote unquote, average of everything, the median, because you're taking out the extremes, right? And so when we're looking at median, the average sales price is going to be different than the median sales price, more than likely, right? Because you're going to have properties that are going to sell for an astronomical amount, and then you're going to have properties that sell for practically nothing. So then you drop those two extremes off, and then in the middle, you have the new median sales price. So when we're looking at median days on market, that's a better indicator. So over January 2024, January 2025, we're down 26.7% month over month. Here's February 2025. So we're down 26.7% days on the market, but we're flat from last year at this time. So still 11 days on market is pretty good. Now, does this mean if your sellers don't sell in 11 days, there's something wrong? No, right? Because with the median, we still have a high, we still have a low, and this is in the middle. So again, this is okay. And 11 days is still rock star status, right? 30 to 60 days is a sort of a healthy, balanced market. So if you have a house on the market for 30 days, there's probably nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't the right fit for the buyers in the marketplace at that time. Now, here's an interesting piece of data. The average percent of list price received, right? So we all like to brag, hey, we got over list price, or if we're on the buyer side, hey, we got it for 5% less than list price. So we are year over year down just 0.1% year over year, but up 0.5% month over month. So last month, this time, we're up just 0.5%, which means that sellers are still getting at or just a little bit above their list price. Now, the fallacy here is that the way the data in the MLS is put out is that if you reduce the price by $10,000 and you get it and you close at that $10,000 less price, that's your list price. So it doesn't look at the original list price versus the current list price. So this is where, when you're working with, say, a tough property or a tough neighborhood where, things are just not making sense, you may want to dig a little deeper to say, okay, yes, all of these are selling for at or above list price, but let's look at the individual histories and see, oh, well, these three properties had been on the market previously and withdrawn, and then they relisted and they started at 795 and now they're 750. And so you may have to tell the story of the data behind the data that you have in front of you, because there's always more to it, right? Price per square foot, we're up overall. So year over year, up 5%, month over month, up over 1.3%. That's not bad. New listings on the market. So, day over day, month over month, how many properties are coming onto the market? We're up 36.1% year over year, 45.5% from the last month. And you can see here, I would totally expect this, right? What I always talk about, the fourth quarter is the Hail Mary pass, right? Kids go back in school here at September. I'm going to kill this TV. And then the market starts to dip a little bit as we go into the holidays, right? Everyone gets busy focusing on the winter holidays, and then it comes back to life and off we go. And we'll see next month's numbers probably climb a little bit more. So 720 new listings on the market, and active inventory. We'll dig more into active inventory here in a minute. But here, over last year at this time, up 50.7%. And then we're up 8.6% from last month. So that's pretty good. The month's supply of inventory, so the absorption rate, we're at 1.9% or 1.9 months of inventory. That means that if we stopped listing new homes on the market today, no more new listings starting today, it would take just under 2 months for everything to be purchased and nothing else left. What this means for our sellers is that it is still predominantly a seller's market. Now, that doesn't mean they can go out there and be jerks about everything and not negotiate and not do certain repairs and things like that. This isn't 2021, but it does mean that the sellers have a little bit more leverage. Now we are down a little bit from last month, where we're up 56% overall. So we have more inventory coming on the market. So, these numbers kind of mimic each other with the active inventory and months of supply kind of thing.
Question.
Yeah.
In looking at new listings versus months of supply, I find it interesting, and my art history major brain is trying to figure this out. But with a 36.1% increase and a 45.5% increase in new listings, and yet our month supply is down 8%. Does that mean that if I were to go back the previous month, was the month supply lower?
So if we look at February, yeah, we were at 2.1 months of inventory, and the new listings on the market were 495. So now new listings and existing inventory are a little bit different, right? So a lot of the existing inventory sold, new properties came on the market, And again, a little bit of a fallacy with the data here. If I withdraw a listing and put it back in as new, that's a new listing according to the data, but it's also existing inventory, right? Because it was just there 5 minutes ago, kind of thing. So, everything's open to a little bit of interpretation. Now, to get different data sets, if we scroll on down, we have more dashboards here. So we have weekly trends, market insight, dashboard, pricing insights, and market snapshot. If we click on the weekly trends, this is going to be a little bit more granular. So here is your median sales price week over week. If we click here, we can see different options. Median sales price. So, all right, so let's look at median versus average here. So right now, for the week ending April 12th, 2025, our median sales price in Hampton Roads is $344.9. All right, now if we click on this bar and we go to average sales price, the average sales price is a bit higher, right? 402. So again, average is everything, the lowest and the highest and everything in between. Median, you drop off the extremes at one end and then average the rest. We can also look at median days on market, right? So 14 days on market. Remember, for the month over month, we were at 11. Now we're at 14 week over week, right? So we've accelerated it from a month view to a week view. We can also look at the weeks supply of inventory, right? So we have 12.7 weeks of inventory. We get some nice little spikes here. So inventory increased. That says December 28th, 2024. Again, not surprising. I would expect to have more inventory on the market and more supply as we're going through the holidays, right? Because homes are just lingering, buyers are not as active in the marketplace. And then if we look here, January 25th, what happened right about January 25th? Does anyone remember?
Snow.
Snow, right? And then we look here, these 2 points between in mid-February, what happened again? More snow. Now, people in other markets laugh at us, and I'm sure Susan is there coming from Baltimore laughing at us. Snow, it's just like, it's a little bit of snow. But around here, snow is a big deal, and it is offensive, and it is crazy, and especially for the second snow that we got, 10 inches plus is just an absolute anomaly. So things shut down and, people mentally shut down. So our spring market was a little delayed in getting started. Normally we're like January 2nd, so long as the weather just kind of stays steady. But when we have abnormal weather like that, which is funny to say snow, winter, abnormal weather, but when we have abnormal weather that we don't expect, then that does cause a hiccup in the market. What I did want to look at, I don't think this is the right screen. Oh, here's one for you. Removed from the market. So these are listings that are expired, withdrawn, or with what's called a terminal fall through. So a fall through, you probably have seen that in the hot sheet. It's like, all right, what's a fall through? So that's when a contract does not go to closing and the property is not returned to the market in that particular listing. So you'll see some fall throughs where it's like, okay, it fell apart, done. We couldn't reach a resolution. But then if you relist that property as new to freshen it up, which people sometimes do, it still looks as a fall through for that previous listing, but then it's a new listing otherwise. So if you want to look at, properties that are coming off the market with potentially no positive outcome, they're expiring and being withdrawn, in little spikes here and there. Overall, it's trending downward, which we would expect to see that again coming out of the holiday season and into the spring. But these are just some nice snapshots for people. Here's median original list price, just to show you, we're sort of hovering in the mid to high 300s. Average percentage of price changes, right? So we would expect to see, as a property sits longer on the market, we would expect to see price changes where it drops, right? But we also see a fair number of price changes where it increases. Where are we most likely to see price increases on listings?
New construction.
New construction, right? Because if I have an active listing in a new construction community and we just closed the one 4 doors down and they did all these upgrades and such, and so let's say it was listed at 360, but they did upgrades and it's closed at 370. Now my base model comp for the neighborhood is 370, right? So that's why we tell people, if they're looking at new construction, which is really, Suffolk and Smithfield and Yorktown, things like that nowadays. But if you're looking at new construction communities, get in early, because every closing puts the price up a little higher, kind of thing. Just ride that wave. So the price changes, they're trending downward, which, is pretty healthy. If we go back to our Domus and we go back to our dashboard here, let's look at pricing insights. All right, so here, this gives you a screen that it should be somewhat reminiscent to Matrix, right? So if you're trying to do some, let's call it 30,000 foot view pricing for an area, this is a good place to start, just to give you some ideas about, where you should be headed. So let's do detached, south side. Let's look at Chesapeake this time to keep things simple, and we'll do South Chesapeake, and it automatically defaults to active, closed, and pending. And then we have some options over here for the current month, last month to date, last 3 months to date. So let's do last 3 months, because that's a good 90-day window. Waterfront, so we're looking at everything, on the water, not on the water. And we have the sliding bar here where we can define a price range. But let's just look at this graph. And I would love for it to, all right, let's close that. There we are. So now we have like this little dashboard thing here, and this creates a scattergram of all the properties in Chesapeake, active, pending, and closed within the last 3 months. And so it shows you here sort of the median right here in the middle. We're looking at somewhere in the 500s, right? So what you can do is plug in a proposed list price. So let's say you have a nice Great Bridge home and they want to list for 600,000. I have enough to do this. Yep. And square feet, maybe typical Great Bridge home, let's just call it 3,000 square feet. I like nice even numbers. And so now it is showing us that the black lines are what we put in for our requirements. The blue line, which is correspondent to this box over here, says that the median sales price for area 32 is $525,000. So it's a little bit of an outlier that we would get 600,000 for our home, but this is a 30,000 foot view, right? So if the median sales price for this region of Chesapeake was 300,000 and we were wanting to price it 600,000 because that's what the Smiths down the street got for theirs, right? And of course we're better than them. Then we might be a bit of an outlier. But this is where you dig in deeper to the data within Matrix, right? You want to then, look at like to like kinds of things, right? Because not every neighborhood is comparable to every other neighborhood. Not every 3,000 square foot home is comparable to every other 3,000 square foot home. Also, Area 32 in Chesapeake runs all the way from the North Carolina line, Hickory, on up to Great Bridge. And those are some vastly different areas. But this just gives you a snapshot. And with these little doodads over here, these little sort of speedometer things, so 54% of the listings in Area 32 in Chesapeake, 54% fall below 600,000. And then 17% are below $200 per square foot. And we have to talk about the price per square foot, again, as a little bit of a fallacy, right? Sometimes we'll do it just as a quick thumbnail sketch on pricing, but price per square foot does not take into consideration amenities to the property, right? Is there a hot tub? Is there a pool? Is there a 1-car garage, 2-car garage, detached garage, right? That's not livable square footage. Quality of construction, right? So if you have a cookie cutter neighborhood and everything is pretty much identical, everyone has roughly the same age home, no one has done anything terribly fancy, not too many pools in the neighborhood, whatever, everyone has a pool. If everything's pretty much copy paste, then you would expect price per square foot to be fairly constant across that neighborhood, but it's not, right? Because if you have one home that sold for $20,000 more because they had a pool, then that's going to skew your price per square foot on that. So don't go by price per square foot as the be all and end all. Zillow likes to do that, but we know how much we can trust Zillow. So scattergrams are fun, and you can see how the individual things, the colors change on the map as I'm going over different properties, and you can can we double click on these? No, one of these you're able to double click and pull up the MLS, but I don't think it's this scattergram. Then, all right, so let's go back to Domus. Go back to our dashboard down here. And let's look at market snapshot. All right, so here's a month-over-month view, market snapshot ending March 2025. So again, we have some choices to make up here. We have sold homes, median sales price, days on market, active listings. We can look at residential detached, attached, Chesapeake, Hampton, Newport News, whatever. And then we can see, oops, number of homes sold by month. So we had our peak, looks like right here, of 300. So this is Chesapeake. We had 378 detached homes sold in May of 2022. That was the peak. The bottom, and this is just the number of homes sold, this is not pricing. The bottom was January 2024 with 134 homes sold. Now this looks a little depressing. So you can highlight, just left click and highlight certain areas, and then that kind of changes the map. It just gives you that time frame instead of going back so far. So this shows you that, yeah, the numbers have trended down. And here again, we would expect to see from December 2024 into January 2025, this bit here, because again, the holidays, and that it starts to come up again. So that seems normal. This is your cyclical market. Here's your median sales price. And again, it defaults back to January 2022. So the median sales price goes all over the place. If this is a good opportunity for you to make the argument to someone that if they're waiting for the bottom of the market, we were there in February 2024 in Chesapeake, right? And you can show them and say, I'm with you, it's all going to crash, it's all going to crash. Okay, and the stock market's going to crash too at some point, but either that's a very long time away or the crash that you're expecting is not that great. So if you want to say, okay, well, what are some other recent crashes? Well, you can maybe say this is a crash, right? You can maybe say this is a crash, but it didn't crater, kind of thing. None of the data is pointing to a 2008, 9, 10 market collapse in real estate. So if someone's waiting for the bottom, the only time we know we've hit the bottom is when it's in the rearview mirror, right? So, this is where you can say, okay, well, you didn't buy last month, and now prices are up again this month. And if we look at the cycle, they're going to go up again into the summer, and they'll come back down again in the winter. And, they went up, they came down, they went up, they came down, they went up, they came down. The downs are not nearly as low as they used to be. So the longer you wait, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, the more you're going to pay. Let's look at days on market. So days on market, median days on market by month, again, going all the way back to January 2022, the longest number of days on market in recent memory is 34. And again, we're just looking at Chesapeake here. 34 days on the market in January 2024. And within the last year, so last year at this time, it was 10 days on the market. And right now it is 16 days on the market in Chesapeake, right? So we're still doing okay. And again, if we wanted to highlight just a portion, so let's just look about the last year. So here's May 2024 to March 2025. 12 days here, 25 days there, and we're 16. And again, 25 days does not give me heartburn. If we click on the active listings tab, this is showing you active listings by month. So this is kind of your inventory. And you can see here that we hit a high point in August 2024 of 521 properties on the market. Again, detached, just in Chesapeake. Low point recently of 402. Now we're at 436. Another low here, this is February 2024, and then another low here of March 2023. So this is telling us, and this is where I kept telling you, Kim, we'll come back to inventory. This is telling us that inventory is up. It's still at historic lows, but it's up more than it had been last year at this time. So we need to kind of tell the story with the data, right? We have buyers out there that are thinking to themselves, there's not much inventory on the market. I'm not going to find what I really want. I'm going to have to compete. I don't want to get involved. I'll just sign my lease for another year. That's what they're telling themselves, because what are we telling the public? Inventory is low, inventory is low. If I just had more houses to sell, I'd be fine. We have more houses to sell, right? And we can see that here. I mean, look, we are up. That's just Chesapeake. Let's see if we can plug in. I don't think it'll let me do all, but here's Virginia Beach. Here again, up. Norfolk, up, right? So we need to start talking with our buyers that, yes, the media is mostly correct in that we still have an inventory shortage. However, we have more things to buy now than we did a year ago. So let's go ahead and make an effort. Let's see what's out there for you to buy, because you're probably going to have a pretty good chance of getting something. Now, here, if we look at days on market are falling. Now, this is median, but here again, if you have a buyer who's in a challenging situation, where might you find opportunity for them in the market? With properties that have been on the market a little while, right? If your buyer comes to you and says, oh my God, this is the perfect home. It just hit the market this morning. Let's go see it. I want to put in an offer. Well, you might have competition, right? Because we know that good homes in good condition in a good neighborhood with a good price are going to attract a lot of attention. So they can make an offer on it, but they might get beat out. And if that keeps happening with these properties that are hot onto the market, then the market is telling us, quote unquote, that maybe they need to look at something that isn't as spiffy, as it were. Maybe something that isn't perfect condition, right? I tell buyers all the time, pretty can be recreated, right? If you don't like the tan walls and you're a fan of agreeable gray, guess what? You can buy a can of paint at Sherwin-Williams for $75 and paint the walls. You're $75 away from the living room that you want. That's what's holding you back, right? This kitchen doesn't have granite. Fine. You're a couple $1,000s away from the kitchen of your dreams. Is that the only thing holding you back? Kind of thing. Now, $5,000 for kitchen countertops, is not chump change, but pretty can be recreated. I mean, you can paint laminate countertops now, and they have some really good products out there. You can paint cabinets, you can change hardware, you can, change out light fixtures. I have found a lot of opportunities over the years with what I call grandma's house, right? The wallpaper can be removed, the wood trim can be painted, the gorgeous 1980s bright brass light fixtures can be swapped out. These are all things that, buyers may have opportunity for something that is not perfect and is not the exact most beautiful thing. All right, let's go back to the dashboard and look at one more item here, pricing insights. No, we looked at we looked at this. I think, did we hit everything?
I think so.
Let me go back and look. I think we did. All right, so now here's a little trick I want to show you. So let's go and let's look at residential detached, attached. Let's look at just the south side. And I'm going to take out Isle of Wight because I don't want to have to drive that far if I don't want to. So the 5 cities of the south side, here is your, rolling 12 months information. If you click on this little button here, this brings up a print window. And so you could print this and take it with you to a client meeting. Or you can also, depending upon your printer dialog box, you can also print to PDF. And now it's in color and you can email it to people. And this is probably going to be a whole nother class because it requires a certain amount of tech savviness. But you can convert PDFs to graphics, and then you can share the graphic online, right? You can do a screenshot or just convert the PDF to a graphic. That's a whole nother thing. But, you can get some great data and push it out and, just show people it's like, hey, look at this cool stuff kind of thing. You can also limit it here with this little spotlight bar. Here we are. So here you can change this from 13 months to year to date. So that changes everything. And now we have bar graphs. So now you can see what 2024 looked like versus 2025. Again, another way to interpret the data kind of thing. So lots of different opportunities here. And Domus Analytics is always improving. It's really, you want to talk about interesting things in real estate technology. Domus Analytics is literally a mom and pop shop. It's a husband and wife that have put this together. And I think maybe they're like total of 5 employees. They go to trade shows. I've talked with them at NAR trade shows. They're very responsive to changes. So they're constantly updating things and adding functionality and things like that. So this is kind of cool because we're used to like the data out of Rain and the MLS and CoreLogic, which CoreLogic is this big beast of a company. And here we are, Domus Analytics, and it's like you can actually talk to, I don't remember his name, and it's not Domus, but you can talk to Mr. Domus himself, and he can, and I've had him show me things on how to change out the data and interpret things. So, that's kind of cool there. So this is one of those things, again, as with all of the tools we have, play with it. It's included in your membership fees to Rain. So, no extra cost here, no subscription. It's a great way to look at data a little differently. The graphics that Rain sends out in their emails once a month. Those are great. And what does everyone do? They share that exact same graphic. So you could create your own data set and share that and stand out a little bit from every other agent. And I see this all the time, and I've done it. I've shared the Rain graphics as they come. It's like, hey, this is cool information. Look at it here. Makes me look smart. But this is a way that you can look just a little bit smarter. All right, any questions about Domus Analytics? All right. Well, I appreciate everyone's time today.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to use this on a listing I'm getting ready to do in Chesapeake. Good info.
Play around
Yeah.
with it.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was great information.
You're welcome, Susan. Yeah, there's all kinds of great stuff out there. I don't know about our next class, but another class coming up, I'm going to do some of the cool stuff that you can get from the VAR website, because we don't use that frequently enough. There's some great stuff there. So I'll dive into that in an upcoming class. All right. But in the meantime, I appreciate you all. I'll see you next time, and go sell a house or something. Why don't you?
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
bye.
Bye, everybody.